right, folks, last month here, Ron Shera of Minnesota Bound told us about a place called Listening Point. This is a cabin up on Burntside, which is near Ely. We wanted to share a small portion of that story before we dive a little deeper into the person who owned Listening Point and why people journey there year-round. Listen.
If you listen closely, you may hear it. The sound of a wilderness philosophy by one of Minnesota's most famous icons.
And he found this place, and he named it Listening Point because he knew that's what he would come here to do, was to listen.
We are out on a tour of Listening Point during the Ely Winter Festival.
We're on a tour of an area owned by Sigurd Olson, nationally respected environmentalist and author, especially known for his philosophy of leaving civilization behind and protecting wild spaces.
So now, years after Sigurd Olson's death, the Listening Point Foundation has preserved the spot. Here to tell us more is Alan Brew, the president of the Listening Point Foundation. Good morning, Alan. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. For people who aren't familiar with the Listening Point Foundation, tell us a little bit about what you guys do.
Yeah, so the foundation was founded by Sigurd's family and close friends in 1998. And the two things that we primarily do are to preserve the cabin and the property that are Listening Point, and then also kind of continue Olson's legacy of wilderness philosophy. And then about 10 years ago, we also acquired the Olson family home in Ely and the small shack, Olson called it, where he did most of his writing in Ely. And so we also protect those two facilities as well.
Alan, how did you find out about Sigurd? What kind of drew you to him and the foundation?
Yeah, so I used to teach nature writing, literature, and in the spring of 2000, I had an opportunity to visit Listening Point with a group of my students. And it was a pretty amazing experience. We had an opportunity to spend the evening on Listening Point, and together we read the essay that Olson wrote titled Listening Point. And as the students were sitting there on the point, they had a chance to actually see, feel the rocks that he was describing in the essay. So it was a really special occasion. And then he did a number of trips there afterwards with students.
So for people who maybe aren't as familiar with his writing as you are, what was it about his writing that you think really sort of impacted and touched people?
Yeah, he was really a unique style, kind of the beginning of kind of a mid-20th century nature writing. And I think it was partly the lyricism of his writing, so very kind of sensitive descriptions of nature. And then also his real connection to sort of what we need as people. And he really believed that we needed opportunities to spend time in wild places. And his writing really kind of captured that and put a philosophy around it. His most famous book, The Singing Wilderness, he talks there about sort of that metaphor of the wilderness singing and being a music that is really helpful to us as people.
I've been to Burntside Lake, and I'm going to be honest, I had not heard of Listening Point, and I think that it's unique that people are still able to visit the facility today and the grounds today and kind of get in touch with what he loved about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a great opportunity, and we've been able to preserve it really as it was when Olson was there and spent time there. He didn't write there, they didn't spend the nights there, but he often would spend his afternoons at Listening Point, and it was really kind of the place he went to be rejuvenated and to kind of step back from a busy life that he had in the latter part of his career.
When you hear from people who are interested in going to Listening Point, what is it that they're seeking? What are they going in search of? What are they hoping to get out of a visit there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think people who have read his writing are going to see the place that he wrote about. And so there's always kind of a neat thing about being present in the place that authors wrote about. So that's, for some of the people who visit, it's sort of a pilgrimage, if you will, to the places that Sigurd Olson wrote about. But I think for a lot of other people, it's an opportunity to experience what it means to have a listening point. It is a very peaceful, quiet, beautiful place. And I think that many people are looking for that opportunity to have time to slow down a little bit and listen in their lives, both to the sounds of nature, but also to themselves too, I think, and to have that kind of space to do that. And Listening Point still very much offers that opportunity for people.
How does one go about visiting Listening Point, and do you have to be silent while you're there?
You don't have to be silent, although we have done some silent tours, which is a really pretty amazing experience. Well, in the very short term, if people are interested in visiting Listening Point, we have a special tour this Saturday as part of Ely's Dark Sky initiative. And so that would be one opportunity. You can go to our website, at the Listening Point website, and just click on a tour, and that will give you directions for that. Otherwise, at this time of year, we do tours by kind of request as we're able. And again, on our website, there's a button you can click to click into that. And then during the summer, late June through September, September, even early October, we have more regular scheduled tours that people can sign up for as well.
I love that. I didn't know this about Sigurd, but I mean, obviously he was a big environmentalist, and we're
Yes.
very lucky to have this in Minnesota, but he worked all across the United States, even into parts of Canada, right? Looking to secure land, preserve it, and really love it for its beauty and keep it the way it is.
Yeah, very much so. So he worked for the National Parks Association and for the Wilderness Society, and then also for a number of years was an advisor, especially related to national parks, to presidents of the United States, and had a big influence on preserving a number of different places. And then also he was one of the folks who worked on the Wilderness Act too. And so really helped kind of shape what that act was, which was passed in 1964.
I think one of the coolest things about him, it was the fact that he didn't really have great success in writing until later in life. And I think there's probably a lot of people sitting at home right now, and maybe
Yes.
at least one sitting right here, that sometimes you get to a certain age and you think that's kind of it, but that was not the case with him.
No, not at all. I mean, he wanted to be a writer from his early 20s, and did some magazine articles and tried, but received lots and lots and lots of rejections. And it wasn't until he was in his mid-50s that he was finally successful in publishing his first book, The Singing Wilderness. That book had also gotten lots of rejections. Interestingly enough, he'd almost given up hope. And then his daughter-in-law, Vonnie, was visiting and helped him work on some of the editing, and kind of gave him the confidence to submit again. And they did. And shortly after it was published, it was a New York Times bestseller. And all of the books he wrote that we know were published after that. So yes, he began his writing career in his mid-50s. So there's still time, and he's certainly a story about perseverance that's really important.
Well, Alan, thank you for sharing a little bit of the background on Sigurd and the available tours at Listening Point. It sounds like a really unique place that I know people would love to visit if they haven't already. So thank you.
Yeah, it's very special.
You can learn more about the Listening Point Foundation by heading to our website, minnesotalive.com.